All right, let's get started, everyone. So thanks so much for joining us in Power Learning this afternoon. For those of you who are Mountain Time or east of there, thanks for joining us this morning if you're west of there. So we're excited to have the fourth webinar in our series of 5, and I'll kind of give some context for that in just a moment. But let me tell you kind of who's joining you today or leading our session. So 2 of us today that are on. My name is Sean Duncan, not John Caesar, but that's my picture there. So my contact will come up at the end of the presentation here, and we'll. So if anybody has any questions, anything you'd like to follow up on about today's session, you can feel free to reach out to me. Also joining in doing the bulk of the heavy lifting today is Ben Hartlieb, who is our Executive Director of Client Services. So both of us will be happy to help out. A few housekeeping items and just some logistics for the day. We are in the process of really trying our best in this time that we're all in to pump out a lot of content that we hope is helpful for teachers, for leaders, whether that be at the building level or the district level. We're doing a lot of that via, so please take a moment to follow us on Twitter at EmpowerCBE. And then on Facebook, you can search us under Empower Learning Competency-Based Education. I'll say just a couple of quick words about our website. That is empowerlearning.net. There is another Empower out there that is in the K-12 space. So just make sure you're landing in the right spot. We have just done a pretty extensive revamp of our front page to align nicely. In fact, Ben's showing a screen of that right now to really align with the content that we are covering today. So I'll go over these steps in just a moment. We'll be honing in on step 6 there, managing student work. But each of these are clickable links, and we've provided links for webinars that we've already covered up to this point. Ben is showing that next spot here. We are in the process of developing some quick videos within each one of these sections, and then a full-on recording of the webinar like the one that we're recording right now. So we'll, as soon as today is over and we can process it, we'll get that up on the website as well. Try to make that easy for people to reach. Some housekeeping items or logistics continued. We would love for you to submit questions throughout the session. I'll be monitoring those pretty closely. So there is, if you look on the left side there on the banner, there's a section for questions. You can submit there. There is also a chat feature. We do actively monitor that during this. If you do have questions that are around content, please submit those in the questions section rather than chats. And then if there are topics, you'd love to give us some feedback or have a side conversation in the chats, we welcome that. We don't create this stuff in a vacuum. We do get work directly with teachers and educators and really try to come up with solutions that are helpful, but we welcome that feedback. If you see something missing or something that you think is not necessary to be in there, please drop us a line. So lastly, the session will be recorded, as I mentioned. Ben, if you could just drop back a screen. And then the slides are available as well as links to resources. So you'll see, if you click on handouts on your left side there, you will see all of those handouts accessible. Some of the things that we're going to share, we recognize or have some very small text, so you can still access those on your end and print and blow up and do what you will with. So next slide, please. Okay, so just to orient everyone within the what we like to call the gestalt or the big picture of the content here. So you'll notice that this is a quick guide for teaching remotely. There are 7 steps that we have identified, starting with creating your online classroom, all the way through monitoring pace. So we've been up to this point doing a webinar, with the exception of that first step there, doing a webinar on each one of these steps. So Ben, if you can just advance to the next slide. So again, we have covered deploying a virtual learning plan, auto grouping / establishing learning expectation, inspiring virtual collaboration, and then today our focus is on managing student work. I would also point out that we have one additional webinar coming up. That is tomorrow, same time as today, and you can register through that by following us online, going to the website, or within the follow-up thank you email that'll come out after this session. So, and then as a TBD, we will kind of loop back around to that creating your online classroom, that first step in the process. We've identified somebody who is out there, a teacher in the field that we think will be a perfect person to cover that content and provide some value to you guys. All right. So in addition to that big gestalt, the big picture, we have also developed a self-reflection tool. So I recognize up front, this is going to be very difficult to read on your end. However, don't forget you have access to this and can download it through the handout section on the left-hand side. So on the left there, in the numbered sections, you see all of those 7 steps. And on the right, we've identified really a learning progression, if you will, for conducting a self-reflection. The point really being not for a an evaluative purpose, but really to try to gauge where are you individually in this process of migrating classrooms from the more traditional approach to the place that we find ourselves now, which is in this remote teaching realm. We do also want to emphasize that, this model, while we have created this based on kind of a burning need that we all have right now, given what's happening nationally and internationally, many of these terms are simply best practices that empower supports. And when we find ourselves in a different situation and are maybe migrating back towards a traditional setting, everything that we create right now will be just as relevant in that traditional setting. So really key that efforts that we put in now towards really good best practice will pay dividends 6 months from now, when hopefully sooner. But pick your timeline on down the road, they'll still be just as relevant. So you could simply, in number 2, replace virtual with just remove it, deploy learning plan. So again, every bit as relevant down the road as it is timely right now. So with that context being set, I'm going to pass things over to my colleague, Ben Hartley.
Thank you, Sean. Hi, everyone. We're about to dig into the meat and potatoes, and I think this will be a meaty session, not in the sense that there's a lot of difficult content, but I think it's really valuable content. And what I was excited about this session for is I think it's sometimes tools that you may not be as familiar with, even if you're kind of a steady and power user. Really getting the kids in there and a couple of quick tricks, some of my favorite spots, to hopefully be helpful as we talk about managing that work that you've created. But back when we talked about making our virtual plans, our playlists, etc. So we're going to look at what is it like to turn in, revise, etc. We're going to look at how the teachers and the students, kind of the life cycle of these activities, how we can have feedback. Students can take their work back to the anvil potentially. And then how this can be done maybe in timely ways. A couple efficiency tips I'm going to give you, maybe some tools you didn't know about, and the ability to do this all in real time and keep those plates spinning and the gears turning. So as always, last little bit of housekeeping, I just always want to emphasize this question mark button. It's surprising how many people didn't know it exists, don't click on it, etc. It's down there. So designed to be kind of unobtrusive, but at the same time, I wish it called itself more attention because it's so valuable. You click there and you're going to get access to our knowledge base. All of our videos, articles, all sorts of stuff in there. You can search them. So we're going to just take a look at things here. This is not a tutorial in this webinar, but if you see things that you want to learn more about, go there. And as always, reach out to us if there's anything that you don't find there that we can be helpful with. We are eager to support you, especially in this time where everything's changed. So let's begin by looking at the student portal itself. Now, one note I'll say here, the student portal changed maybe a year, 18 months ago or so. And so the first thing you might do as you're getting students in, make sure you've got a student portal that looks like this. If you're seeing something else for your students or your parents, then request an update. We don't always push out new tools because we don't want to disrupt people. You're used to a certain layout, and if as Empower evolves, more often than not, we talk to you before we launch those kind of updates. So if you're finding something there and you'd rather have this is far superior to the previous one, obviously, that's why we switched to it, and all of our resources and support now is geared toward this page. Pretty neat here because these classes fold up. So the first thing I'll see when I log in is I see my classes, etc. And I highlighted a few things I really want to call attention to. One of the first things you'll see when you log in here, parents have the same page, by the way, same layout. But I see my class log, and this is a place where any kind of events that happen in this class, new scores, new messages, new assignments, things like that, those go here. So I don't have to hunt for them. I'll see what action has happened in my class, and I can open that and drill in from there. Empower, as we discussed before, is going to recommend to me the things that are next up. That could be based on playlist order, based on my mastery and my needs, or based on the fact that me or my teacher has pinned this there. So this is probably where I'm going to get my marching orders for the day when I log in and I'm looking to put some homework behind me. Pace meters are here. Monitoring pace, I believe, is our next session. And so we'll dig in a little more there. There's lots of great videos. We've got spreadsheets where you can figure out how pace works, and you can kind of change some numbers and calculate. It's all in the knowledge base for you. But this is a great way, as we talked about previously, to continue to keep the pressure on, the pressure to achieve, continue to know there's an expectation, communicate to people at home, this is the expectation and this is how you're doing relative to it. Down here, a student gets a chance to look at their playlists. They can unfold the things that you've created and interact there. And then finally up here, the quick access ID, which we've also mentioned before, it lives right here. And this is a place where every activity has a little number. And if you give that number out, it's a unique identifier, the kids can just type it in right here. And you say, look, guys, this is the day's work, maybe on your morning meetings. Here's the number for today, gang. Go plug that into your quick access ID, finish that one activity, and you'll know that you're doing fine for my expectation. So that's a really simple way to direct the learner's attention. If you want to go deeper into this, this is a picture of one of the resources, again, from your question mark button, from your knowledge base. It's called, I think, Student Portal Annotated, if you're looking for it. As you can see, we've labeled everything that happens, all the moving parts on this page. And then below that, as you scroll down, you'll see that those items are labeled and explained and linked to things. And so if you want to know more about where's this, where's it coming from, why don't I see that, or why does mine say this, or how can I change it, start here. Go to your knowledge base and look for this article, and you'll learn all about the student page and become a real pro. The next few slides, I wanted to look at the homework life cycle. You can see a couple different screens here. I'm going to walk you through it. But the green stuff is what's happening on the teacher side. The yellow stuff is what's happening on the student side. So here's a Hamlet activity. This is in my Shakespeare playlist, the one that we looked at earlier this week together. And it's full of my instructions, my videos, resources, etc. Excuse me. Now, I deliver that out, right? I build it in my playlist. I send it out there. I assign it to my kiddos. They log in and they dive into the Hamlet stuff. They've got steps. They've got instructions. They've got YouTube videos, Wikipedia articles, the text of the play, links to other places I want them to learn. Whatever it is that this learning activity involves, we saw how that's all built in here. Now, the kids will do this, and you might say, hey, take a deep dive, analyze Hamlet's character. Well, they have opportunities. How are they going to respond? And you can be explicit here, but also Empower gives them these options to write something natively, draw something, attach a file, link to somewhere else, pull things from their own Google Drives. All these different ways they can start creating their response based on your instructions. they load that over to the locker, which is kind of a holding place, a limbo for all of their stuff, because they may start punching out a first draft of a Hamlet essay, but it's not ready for turning in yet. So they keep it in the locker, and from the locker, they'll push a green button. It looks just like this green button here, and that'll turn it in to you. Now, if along the way, at any point in this process, we've got tab 4, the feedback tab, which we talked about a little bit in our communication webinar. This is a private place just between me and my teacher where I can ask questions, and then I might go back to my locker and incorporate that instruction into what I was doing. So it's kind of a whole little feedback loop here, and the work may stay here for however long it takes for the learner to feel confident. They send it off. You get an alert in your upper right-hand corner. It's the scoring inbox. Anywhere that you get things turned in. So think about if you were just in your classroom and you had a wire basket on your desk, and it could be that kids from 7 different periods are dropping different assignments there. And if they're working at their own pace, they might be all sorts of different assignments. This inbox is the same way, can act in the same way, let's say. This inbox, we open it and we see something like this. Here's Tyrion. He has turned in something about unmanned moon landings. I could click that file and open up the doc, read his work. When I created this activity, I aligned it to 3 different learning targets. And so I immediately, upon reading that, I have an opportunity to give scores. I can click this, rubric definitions will appear. I select the score I think he merited for that particular standard. And I give him a one maybe for grammar and punctuation, and one for a social studies standard, and one for a science standard. You might cover all that stuff in a moon landings activity. So I give him separate scores, and I can leave a comment. I say, hey, great job, or here's something to consider next time, or I need you to make some edits or something like that. Now, all this is getting filed away in the appropriate places. For example, his document here that he's made, that goes in his portfolio. If I ever pull up one of these standards again and want to know what Tyrion knows, I'm going to find that. These scores are going to all the appropriate grade books. If I flip over and I go back to just my scoring tab and I want to score there, the scores I give here will be there. They'll be in his portfolio. They'll be in his true score estimator, all of that. So this is just a quick place that brings all these things together, and I review, score, comment. And I scroll down and I see, okay, he finished a quiz. Let me review that. It scored itself. Then it looks like probably Neville Longbottom turned something in. I review, score, comment, review, score, comment. And in this way, I can work my way without flipping out of any screens through everything that's been turned in for me and catch up on my grading. Now, one objection that might have occurred to you, certain types of thinkers, you don't want to jump from this essay to that worksheet to a quiz and all these different topics. You want to sit down with those essays, you got that in mind, and you get warmed up to that, and you get on a roll. There is a filter button, which we'll look at in a moment, that this has. From here, they get an alert to the class log, and then the cycle, they get an alert that we've got a new score, and the cycle continues itself. Let me advance slides here. I went over that all in detail there, but I had a slide for each of these to talk about. So Hamlet activity, I think we understand. Here's a zoom in on this. So as I was explaining, they've got their tabs that might be more visible here. I've got steps, I've got my activities, I've got ways I can respond. Here we're showing a little bit closer up our inbox that I got on my tangent about. So you can see here, review, score, comment, and then off to the left here, cropped out, you'll see this filter. And this is what I was describing. Here I can select, I just want to see Hamlet essays right now, and it'll just show me everybody's Hamlet essay that's turned in, and I can work my way down essays. I can look at just certain students, just certain groups. So really great tool here if you're wanting to focus in, kind of get your mind in a groove as you're scoring. And then final step here, we start the cycle over again. The students get my feedback, and either that's it, good, you're done, move on to the next activity, or come back here to your locker, pop that baby open, make a second draft, turn it in, etc. Now, another place I wanted to highlight is about seeing the gaps. So we're plugging along. How do I know kind of what kids' statuses are? I've got my evidence gradebook showing here, and I've highlighted a few different things that can happen that are more or less missing work, gaps, right? Let's start at the top there, a blank. And I want to tell you kind of what these mean and what the ramifications of each are, how they came to be. So blank means nothing. Literally, it's blank. Now, this particular student didn't turn this in, let's say. So there's no evidence there. First of all, what does that do? Well, the answer is nothing. It is a nothing. And it is not evidence, so we can't include it in any scoring calculations because it doesn't mean that he got a 0. Doesn't mean that he got a low score. We know nothing about what he knows here. And in fact, that may be by design because maybe Daniel was excused from this particular activity for whatever reason. He didn't need to turn it in. And the last thing that I want is because I left a blank, I don't need Daniel getting an alert at home, especially when nowadays mom and dad are probably much more logged in and kind of attentive than they were weeks ago. I don't need Daniel getting grounded on my account because I left him a blank because I wasn't expecting it. So a blank, in short, does nothing. Perfectly safe to leave it as a blank if you want nothing to happen. NA. NA means, of course, not applicable. This happens when a student is actually actively unassigned from something. Up here's my tool scoring bar. And this UA button, if I select that just the same way that I would as a score and I click on a certain cell, like if I was to click here, it would give Daniel an NA and it would note that Daniel doesn't need to do this assignment. He's excused from it. And that might be a great use. Mostly it's for my sake, so I can fill in my blanks. OVD means overdue. When this happens, it's an alert on my side that Daniel's got the same status on his side. He's got a little alarm clock that he'll see. I've got an overdue here, and that might be an opportunity for me to follow up with Daniel or make a note. Maybe it's clerical, it's on my side. I might want to give the score. I might want to message out to Daniel. I might take any of these actions, including putting the M in. So here's an M. Now I can pick an M the same as I do any of my other scores, and I can actively pop it into a cell, paint it into a cell. And the big value add here is that now we are alerting people. Mom and dad are getting a little red alert on their homepage. So is the learner. I'm getting a thing here that, look, I expected to see this. Now, how does an M, an overdue, and NA calculate in these students' scores? They don't. Again, these aren't, scientists say, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Just because she has an M doesn't mean I know she's no good at grammar and punctuation. I have no evidence to make a conclusion. So I need to go and hunt this evidence. So with all these statuses, this is what can really help drive our next instructional decisions, right? Do we follow up? Do we see some gaps here? We need to start making some special content for particular learners with their particular needs. We're going to look in the next steps here. How do we identify these as a whole, and kind of how do we follow up on them? Here I've got another neat tool I wanted to show you. Is something that hasn't been well enough kind of in the literature or in the trainings, and so probably new to all of you, and probably going to really appreciate this little bit of info. Within your report viewer, you'll find the report viewer on the reporting tab. Sometimes it's labeled as print progress reports. Report tab, print progress reports. You'll find not just progress reports there, but a lot of different reports that you can run, one of which is the Educate Assignment Report. And if you do this, I've pulled a picture here of one of the filters. You get a chance to filter down for schools and students and teachers, etc., but also what kind of activities do we want here? And in this case, I've highlighted show missing grade tasks. There are also, you could show overdue items. You could show things that the students didn't score the MAS for. So kind of an opportunity to look for these gaps. Without clicking through my grade books, I can pull bigger sets of students, etc. And then you'll get a little report kind of like this. What's neat about this is it's going to show whatever I did. So here's all the M's for missing. I can see all these. So, but also this is just for this one learner. The way that this is going to be print ready is I could download PDFs. I could print out pages. but for every learner. So you might take this bit of info and have that be a communication home to parents to let them know, look, over this spring break, we're not going to be posting assignments, but there is still work that Johnny can do to catch up, because that expectation is still going. We're going to pick it right back up, full steam ahead, after what is technically spring break. It might not feel like spring break. I wanted to highlight this tool, the control panel. Another good tool that's kind of right there, but often people just don't click on it. You kind of get using a software and you have the places you go, and then there's a bunch of buttons that you don't click. So I wanted to turn you on to the control panel, because what it is it's a place where I can control just that one activity. I think it's aptly named. I've got things like assign. This is where I can see, is this assigned to them? Are they active on it? Do I want to activate them? Do I want to unassign it? I can lock them out of things. Maybe it's a test and I don't want them to see it. And when they're ready, I can come here and unlock as a group or unlock individuals. I can see their statuses here, etc. Due date management is here. If you're working carefully with your due dates, which not everyone is, and that's a-okay. If due dates are important to your classroom management, you'll find those options here. Just a few more things. I wanted it to be known as you're managing student work, there's every opportunity that something pops up that you're like, where'd that come from? One possibility is students have the ability to make their own work. This is pointing incorrectly. It should be pointing here. Students, this is a student page again, but notice this button, they can create their own activity. So they might be at home. My little girl is 8 and she had one of these, they don't use Empower, but same idea this week. They learned a concept, I think it was about water volume or something, but the assignment was for them to go and figure out a way to demonstrate this principle. I thought that was really creative. So, you know, using jugs or the bathtub or whatever. There's a chance here where learners can make their own stuff. They would align it to standards, and we flip the script. They assign it to their teacher. So this is a great way to keep kids engaged, maybe even turning these lemons into some lemonade, because there's a lot of creativity, there's a lot of opportunity, there's plenty of time in some households for kind of that more creative learning. Some of the stuff I've seen my kids doing, heard of others doing. So feel free to leverage that, but I also wanted you to just know if kids are on here and clicking around, you might find an activity that you didn't create and wonder where it came from. It's likely that one of the learners discovered that button. Final tool I'm going to show you here is just the opportunity to create custom groups. So as we're looking at the students' work, as this picture is materializing of who's where, we looked at auto grouping earlier. We looked at missing work, and I may discover that certain learners are ahead of the pack. Certain learners are behind the pack. I have a chance in Empower to make custom small groups. They're real simple. Again, there's resources in the knowledge base. I can edit them afterwards is what this is showing, but maybe I've got some superstars in my math group. Everybody's doing multiplication. These guys are ready for long division. If I make a small group, it just makes it a little easier to manage. As always, all their scores and stuff is going to their portfolios and the right grade books and all that. It's a really informal group. You can choose to have them see it or hide it on their page. There's an option there for that. But what's neat is now I can manage them when I pull up a grade book. It's just them, and I might have a grade book with just the different skills they're working on, just different assignments that I can create and assign to those learners who are working in a different place or in a different way. I can message them really easily as a group, and we can do all that interaction. So they are still belong maybe to my large officially rostered class, but I can make a small group there just for our own convenience, like just meet on the side, a little pull out. And then I'm just going to sandwich this again at the risk of overdoing it to encourage you to get into that need help button, check out those knowledge-based videos, learn more about the stuff that we've been talking about here and other stuff. And as I think we've all said over and over, if there are resources you need that you're not finding, let us know. We're eager to pack this baby out so that every learner can be self-directed and not put any obstacles in the way of making Empower super powerful, whether you're at school or you're at home. And I'm going to pass the conch shell back to my man, Sean.
Good deal. Thanks so much, Ben. I just wanted to piggyback on something that Ben just mentioned, is that if you are not seeing a resource that you're wanting, first line of defense is to please reach out to us. We can point you to that resource. But in addition to that, if there is something that you're requesting that we don't have an existing resource that covers, we are more than willing to create something that fills that need. So again, please keep the lines of communication open. We want to be as helpful of a resource to you guys as we possibly can. So making a switch into kind of Q&A section here, we have received quite a few questions. So I'm going to just kind of dip into those and cover them as they've come in.
Super.
So first up, what do we do if we don't know, or if students don't know their login info?
Oh, good question. So that this is a function of an administrator, FYI. So there are admin tools where you can see student names and emails, logins, passwords, etc. There's really good. I know that it's well covered in the knowledge base. In short, if I can pull up an Empower, I'll show you super fast. There's two ways to do this. It is either one view at a time. If I'm just looking for one learner, then I'm going to give you the Cliff's Notes. If I'm just looking for one learner, Sherlock Holmes is your guy. Click there, search their name. You can pull up their information. If you're looking for look, all of my learners, again, there's more in-depth articles for this, but this button, Manage User Accounts, will give you just a view of it on your screen. You can work with that tool and you can pull up just a bunch of usernames and passwords. If that's kind of what you need to know, you can also manipulate them as groups. And finally, within your reporting section, so again, my progress report printer, also sometimes called the report viewer, look for login sheets. There's Guardian login sheets. I believe there's a student login sheets. What you can do there is you can print out little pages for each. Again, download this as a PDF to be emailed out or something that have username and information there. Now, if you're real savvy and lucky, your kids have their Gmail accounts associated with their Empower accounts. And if they do, they can simply log in by identifying with Google. So there's maybe too many answers to that question, but if you're struggling with that, it's a super important piece. I'd be thrilled to talk with you if you reach out and kind of look at your case and how your data is set up and what's the best plan of attack based on your need.
Good deal. Thank you, Ben. Okay, so the next question, within number 7, and I believe this is a reference to the 7th step, monitoring pace, you show the pic on a cell phone. Is there talk of including an app for Empower?
Yes. So first of all, Empower is, as you probably know, it's browser agnostic, device agnostic. We do test on tablets, etc. So it will open on the cell phones already as a web feature, but a lot of times there's not enough kind of screen space. There is an app coming. To my knowledge, it should be coming fairly soon in the Apple Store. I don't know if Sean, if you know, is that the fall or a summer date?
Don't have the latest update on that, unfortunately.
So, to the best of my knowledge, it is a parent-facing app. So it's designed primarily to be for parent interface. It's going to be in the Apple Store. Google Play Store release will be after that at some point, but it should be ready for the Apple Store sometime this year, hopefully before the next school year, I believe. Otherwise, at present, no. I'm hoping that project is a success and good feedback and becomes the seed of more. But for a teacher interface and all these tools, at present, the web interface is the way to go.
And I would just tack on to that, if whoever posed that question, if you'd like to reach out to me with an email directly, my contact info will be at the end here, but it's sean@empowerlearning.net. Please pose that question and I can try to find a more definitive answer for you on that, so we have a better sense for timeline on it. Okay, so next question is there a way that a teacher can get a view that is similar to the learner's view? When I click on student view, it looks unlike what my learners see.
Okay, good question. So first, let me explain where you would see student view. Anytime that you see a kid's face, like here or in my gradebook, I can click and then I can go to view homepage. And I think that is what is being referred to as student view. And you should get to see what your kiddos see. Now, two caveats. One, the question says it looks nothing like what my learners see. I'm not totally sure if this might have solved it. You might be clicking the wrong place. This is a great place to go to see what they see. View homepage. If you're not seeing that, definitely let us know. Might be a help ticket. We can repair those links. Now, the other thing is you might not be seeing what I'm seeing. You might be looking at a little bit of a different format. And remember, I said this page has changed in the last 18 months or so. So if you haven't yet gotten the latest student homepage, again, that's probably by design. We don't want to disrupt what one day you log in and everything is different, right? So just let us know and we can get you the latest update and update your page to this. So that's the generic answer. If that didn't answer the question for the questioner, again, please reach out and we'll help you troubleshoot that specifically.
Great. Next up, where was that dive deeper slide? Do you search in the knowledge base, dive deeper? And I think that was the annotated version. If it relates to that, we did post a link in the chat to the specific article. So I think we've addressed that.
Okay, good. And it was called Student Portal Annotated. There it is. This is the one that we showed. And here it's a little small, but you can always click this button to get taken to the full screen version.
Okay, excellent. Really good questions.
Yeah. So
next up, within the score evidence side, what are the little green checks at the upper right corner of a score for some of the score 3.0s?
Oh yeah, I saw it. Let's pull it up. Got too many browsers. I know the ones you mean. Okay, what those mean are, looking here, these little checks. Okay, so the little checks mean that there was content here, like a kid turned something in and it's reviewed. So you might see a little gray, I think at letter I is what it would be here. That means there might be content turned in that needs review. So it's just another way to kind of give a quick signal if you're stepping back, looking at your grade book, how things are going. These kids have turned stuff in. This guy didn't. These kids have turned stuff in. I need to grade it. These scores have comments associated with them. So that's what those mean. Really good question. The other most common question is the color coding. Might as well do that while we're here. The color coding just relates to the number. So ones are pink, blues are twos, etc. Some of these are gray. Most commonly, that is because they weren't entered by a human. They were probably entered by the Empower, some sort of automation that this site had set up. And that's a way to let you know as well, kind of a soft signal that that's going on behind the scenes. So a lot of information being presented here if you know how to read it. Good question.
All right, thank you, Ben. This next one is kind of a two-part question. This says, I need a way to include assessments in our playlist. I have put a PDF of the assessment under an activity in the playlist, but how can they fill it out and hand it in? I teach math for 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. Can they do a screenshot? Or maybe we should, or maybe we make the assessment a Word doc. Getting the assessment back to the teacher in an easy way is key.
Okay, all creative ideas, and the answer to all that is that's all works. If you want me to suggest what I would consider to be the best way by far, is to use the quiz tool that's native to Empower. Let's see if we grab one real quick, and I won't go too deep into this, but I'll leave you to your knowledge base and contacting us to go more in depth. But within the playlist, when you're building this out, one of these modules you can use is actually an assessment. It's a quiz, and it is designed where you can make these questions. There's even a great math symbols drawing tool, so you can include all the crazy math that you'll ever get to. But what you can do is every question here can be aligned to one standard. Kids can interact right here. Teachers can make and shift the content around. Lots of options here to make, really create, customize, share, reuse, retake, And additionally, what's great is depending on the question types you set up, you can set this up to be self-scoring. So you want that quick turnaround. You want kids to be able to interact with this right away with the fewest clicks. Take the time to build it out here. It'll be useful for years to come. And kids can get immediate feedback and continue on their way. Teacher can come and just check it if they need to, follow up. So that's the tops. However, Empower is designed for anytime, anywhere learning. So if you've got resources that you're married to that are in PDF style, yeah, you can load those up here. But it is a bit more cumbersome, right? Like you said, people have to look at that. They have to create a place to interact with it. They have to get that digitally to their teacher. Empower takes care of all that. That's kind of the point of Empower. It is the place where you can do that work conveniently and have it all in one place, have it all aligned to standards, and filed away here nice and tidy. So I hope that's helpful.
Good, Ben, that wraps up the questions. So if you want to move forward to the last part, and we will close out our session today. I mentioned earlier that I would provide some contact info towards the end here. So again, if there are additional questions or you have any support needs, maybe there's something that we answered that didn't quite nail your specific issue, please feel free to reach out to me. My name again is Sean Duncan, Strategic Change Officer. My contact info is there. We'll leave this up for just a second. But also know that if you go to empowerlearning.net and go to contact, you can find my information there as well. So no need to save it. And then also we can make the presentation available in the handout section. So with that, Ben and I both thank you greatly for joining us today. And on behalf of all of us here at Empower Learning, thank you so much for all the work that you guys are doing out there. The general consensus is that teachers are really working their tails off right now. And on behalf of us, thank you for all that hard work. Whether you're a teacher, an administrator at the building or district level or in some other role. Thank you so much.